It's Pete from Cheap Homesteading, and I am in the pasture where I decided to put my emergency garden. This is going to be part of the Victory Garden series, and if you watched the last video, I plowed up the pasture. I started rototilling it and pulling stones, rototilling it, pulling stones, and you know what? The stones keep coming, but the stones are getting smaller, so I do see improvement, but I won't have time this year to get all the stones out of this garden. It's probably going to be a lifetime of picking stones to get the stones out of this one. But I do need to get my potatoes planted because you know what? I'm running out of time. I really have to get everything planted by this weekend coming, or I'm just going to start running out of time at the end of the year. So I'm going to pick the stones in the garden one more time, and then we're going to start planting the potatoes. Remember, I was plowing here the other day, and I started to notice that there's some really good ground on this side, so I really concentrated my efforts to this side. It does actually look pretty good, but there is a ton of stones. It is absolutely crazy the amount of stones I pulled out of here, and it still looks like I didn't even pick any stones at all. This is as good as it's going to get, so I'm going to start planting the potatoes. And you know what, this is a little bit of a spare of the moment thing, but you know what, there's no reason why the potatoes won't do good as long as I can keep the weeds down and keep it hilled up. So I guess I'm just going to start planting them. I kind of went with the potatoes I had. They're just normal store-bought ones, but they're from my area, and you can just see that they're just starting to sprout. So these are really starting to sprout, so this should work good. It's been pretty hard for me to get out to the store, and I had 2 bags of potatoes and they started to sprout, and I thought, you know what, they're probably a great way of getting my potato count up this year without spending more money than I already have. I've never had problems growing store-bought potatoes. You want to make sure that they're not genetically modified, because some potatoes are genetically modified and they're from your areas. It's really important we kind of make sure that we don't spread more disease around. It's hard enough to grow stuff, let alone actually adding more problems. So make sure it's from your area, and I've had no issue growing store-bought potatoes. I'm going to make my rows about 4 feet wide. That means I can actually run my rototiller down it maybe once or twice, and I can hill them up good. But once the plants get big, I probably won't fit my rototiller down the row. But by then I find that the potato plants kind of crowd out, so it doesn't get too weedy. So we're going to start planting. I cannot explain how many hours I've spent picking rocks in this area and roots, and they're still just absolutely everywhere. And it does get to a point where you just gotta plant stuff. So you know what, I think it's gonna do fine with the stones. The main issue is you got to make sure you get the bed fully worked up, and it's fully worked up. There's just tons of little tiny stones everywhere. You know, if I actually built a screener, I would have a wonderful amount of gravel, I tell you. That might actually be a great idea, to build some sort of screener. broke the handle. I'm gonna have to fix a lot of my handles. I had a bad habit of leaving my stuff outside. I'm gonna fix all the handles. Maybe I'll make them myself. Maybe I'll be a bit better at actually bringing them in. 1, 2, 3. She ain't pretty and there's tons of stones, but I ended up getting 4 rows here and I probably have enough potatoes to plant that. I am going to make a potato tower at the back of the house, so this won't be all the potatoes I have. I really didn't want to make a bunch of potato towers and hope that the potatoes worked. I wanted to diversify it to make sure that I got a good crop, because you know what, I love potatoes, and potatoes go so far though too. And they store well, so they're really important staple in your diet for sure. Most people know this, but you can cut the potato in a few pieces as long as it has an eye, and it'll take off from there. It is better to keep the potato bigger, so I don't cover up any of my rows till I know I have enough. Because if I'm short just a couple, I can go back and maybe cut a potato a little smaller. Oh my goodness, it's actually pretty warm today. And you know what? I am used to the cold all winter long, and then all of a sudden it starts to get warm. It's probably even not that warm out. I'm just not used to the temperature, so this is one of the first really nice warm days we've had, and I'm not going to complain about it. I finished planting the potatoes. You know, they don't look too pretty, but they're in the ground. I'm going to come back later and pick some rocks and hoe some more dirt up around the potato mounds, and I'm just hoping there's enough dirt for those potatoes to grow in. I'll just try to keep on it all year. There's one bonus to having it out in a place that didn't have grass before. Half your weeds aren't there, so I don't suspect like I'll get a ton of weeds the first year in here, but it's every year after that it just gets bad. So I'm going to show you how it looks. It doesn't look too bad. I just got to come pick some stones. I think I'll run the rototiller up the row one more time so I have more dirt to hoe up, and then make the mounds nice and big to begin with. I have 4 rows of potatoes in. Whenever I plant my raised beds, I'm going to have more potatoes in there. So we should have a good amount of potatoes this year. I'm going to run the rototiller through the rows one more time and build the mounds up. I'm going to try to make the mounds nice and big. I think this is the time to do it. Get as much dirt, make nice big mounds, and then I'm probably good for the rest of the year, except a little bit of hoeing just to get a little more dirt on the top. Otherwise, my potatoes are planted, and I think I'm going to go in. That's about enough for today. You guys have a good one.